One question that's always brewing between hip-hop heads is who are the best 5 rappers of all time? And today we're going to be reacting to different top 5 lists that you guys sent in through YouTube, Twitter, and even some other ones that we found online. And before we get started, guys, let us know down in the comments who are your top 5 rappers of all time. And at one point, we're going to give our own list of maybe our top 10, top 25. We'll see what happens. But let's get started with the first list, which is Trippie Redd's list of his top 5 rappers. In no order, we have Lil Wayne, Drake, André 3000, Uzi, and Playboi Carti. Any surprises here, bro?
Well, Uzi and Playboi Carti, I think, making a top 5. But I mean, it's pretty predictable, though. I mean, you're obviously going to say your friends at a certain point, right? Or the people that you support. So I don't blame him for saying that.
It's just that, like, they're only at, like, the halfway mark in their career, I feel like. And no one calls, like, Kylian Mbappe the GOAT just yet. Like, these guys, Uzi and Carti, they're in the history books for what they did for the SoundCloud era and the different waves that they started. But it's just premature, bro.
I know, but at least, listen, at least in our opinion, but I do know a lot of kids do think that, like, Carti's the GOAT. You know how many times I've seen that take online, and even in our own Discord, let's say, there's full of people that put him into those types of lists. What's interesting, though, is that you'll get those types of rappers, but then you're going to see the Andre 3000 pop up out of nowhere, and that's what's interesting is, like, it doesn't matter what era you come from or what type of music you appreciate. You have to appreciate Andre 3000's influence, the catalog he left behind, with Big Boy and Outkast, even stylistically what he's able to do. But Drake and Lil Wayne, that's very interesting. So the whole Young Money era going on there. Do you hear it in Trippie Redd's music? Let's say.
I think for Wayne, you definitely do. I mean, you know, I think that opened up Trippie to be so versatile in terms of like coming out with a rock album the same way that Lil Wayne did that with Rebirth. And he wasn't the first rapper to do that, but he did it in a way where he sort of blended traditional hip-hop and had that crossover the same way that Trippie was able to do it. And even looking at Trippie's image as a rapper, it's definitely inspired by Wayne.
Absolutely. You could say maybe like the melodic performances from Trippie kind of like coincide with what Drake did stylistically, but
it's kind of a weak list, though, I'm not going to lie. But next up, we have the Billboard's list, and this is one that got a lot of conversation. And the top 5 were number 5, Eminem, number 4, Tupac, number 3, Nas, number 2, Kendrick Lamar, and number 1, Jay-Z. And I mean, listen, it looks fine and dandy, you know, from a top 5 perspective, but if you actually went through their entire list, you had like Nicki Minaj over people like Ice Cube and Scarface and other rap legends, and that's what's kind of more questionable. But as a top 5, do you like it? Do you enjoy seeing Kendrick above people like Biggie or Nas?
I'm the biggest Kendrick fan in the world, but I don't think that he should be that high up just yet. And I mean, I think he even spoke about this list itself and said that he was happy to see that Jay-Z made the number 1 position. I mean, it's one of the most standard lists you'll ever see. Like, how could you possibly complain with this list, you know?
I just feel like, to me, Nas is the greatest of all time when you look at just, like, storytelling ability. The fact that he had 3 different primes in his career, starting off with Illmatic, then It Was Written, then picking it back up at Stillmatic, going on to the Lost tapes, and then going into, like, this new resurgence he's had. He's the greatest of all time to me, so I feel like number 3 isn't high enough. But the next list, we have Trey Got That Game from YouTube. Thank you for sending it in. Number 5, 21 Savage. Number 4, Polo G. Number 3, Lil Uzi Vert. Number 2, Juice WRLD. And number 1, prime NBA YoungBoy, and the reasoning being versatility and can give you storytelling here and there.
So listen, this is interesting because Trey actually came into the YouTube comment sections and gave explanations for each one of his picks, and I like that. At least if you're going to make some claims, back it up. But listen, Trey, I don't think there's enough evidence for this list, in my opinion. I could understand maybe from a modern, like, trap perspective, I guess, but I mean, on an all-time list, there's just way too many people that are not included.
Yeah, I think NBA YoungBoy is just one of the worst mainstream rappers, and I've given this take before, but I just feel like it's funny to me that he mentioned storytelling, just because if you go into like some of YB storytelling cuts, for example, something like a Snow Bunny, it's such an uneventful story, and it's a story about like him being in jail and a girl like mailing him letters in the jail cell, and he's not even making an effort to make his like lines rhyme together in that track, and it's such a weak storytelling cut, so how could you give that as evidence, bro?
I know, but listen, at least he does have his storytelling cuts. But what's interesting enough is that I'm looking at all of these fan bases, and each and every single one of these fan bases would put them as their GOAT. You know, that's what's interesting. So I mean, like,
that's for any rapper's fan base, but like he's calling Juice WRLD the best freestyler. Like, listen to King Los, listen to what Black Thought and Royce the 5'9" did on like Funk Flex, and tell me if Juice WRLD is the best freestyler. You know, like
Yeah, but he does have his moments, though. I'm not going to discredit Juice WRLD's freestyling abilities.
no, absolutely, he's a great freestyler. I just don't think that he's the best.
No, he's not the best. I think there were better than him. But even looking at Lil Uzi at that number 3 position, I mean, kind of similar to Trippie Redd, I just don't think he should be in
I don't think any of them should be in the top 5, top 10, top 15, top 20 convo. But let's keep on going. Next up, we have our buddy Craig from Twitter. Shout out to you, Craig. And your top 5 goes like this: number 5, Future; number 4, Lil Wayne; number 3, Kanye; number 2, Nas; number 1, Jay-Z.
So this is the first time we're going to see Kanye in a list actually for today, which is actually pretty interesting. But a lot of people were talking about that Future pick. Listen, I don't even think he cracks my top 10, if I'm being completely honest with you. I think that there are far and superior rappers in front of him. But people are making the argument that, the impact is undeniable. He has the catalog to back it up. What he's been doing as a rapper for the longest time now, a decade plus, is super impressive. But I just don't know if I could put him in a top 5 list.
I think to say he's the best trap artist of all time, I understand that perspective. I do like the fact that Craig, he included his usual suspects like a Nas and a Jay-Z, but he also like took from different decades. You have Future from the 2010s, Wayne who dominated the 2000s. But if you're going to choose someone from the 2010s, you can make a case for a Kendrick maybe, or a Drake, or a J. Cole, or a Freddie Gibbs, or a Rhapsody, but you're choosing Future out of all people?
Okay, listen, I'm not sure if Rhapsody would go over Future. I think
maybe not.
I think that's a bit too far.
In terms of classic albums, technical rapping ability, beat selection, there's so many other 2010s rappers that should be ahead of Future, in my opinion. But
you know what? Just to play a bit of devil's advocate, it's quite interesting because all those things that you did mention, like Future kind of has them on lock. Like, he has classic albums, he has the influence. Stylistically for the trap lane, he's one of the best to ever do it. I do think that there is some sort of reasoning to it, but I don't know. I wouldn't have him in my top 5.
If this was top 5 for the 2010s, I'd understand it a bit more, but for this list, I don't think it's valid. Let's keep on going, though. Next up, we have Trevor Miller from YouTube. Shout out to you. Number 5, 21 Savage. Number 4, Lil Durk. Number 3, Future. Number 2, Lil Baby. And number 1, Polo G. And he said this: lyricism isn't super important to me, and I like more vocals, flow, and emotion put into a track, even though Baby and 21 might not have the most emotion. And you know what, Trevor, I respect you, even though I feel like this would be a list made by someone that only listens to like the radio or like Rap Caviar's playlist. Let's be honest.
Yes, you could say that, but also I feel like a lot of new generation listeners have been making these lists, and like we're still only like 22, 23, so we're still a part of like that new gen, but I feel like I've done a lot of homework myself and going back to the 90s and understanding a bit more. And I guess you can maybe say that this is a personal favorites list, because this is the thing. It gets kind of shady because there's the personal favorites list and then there's what you consider the best.
And they bleed into each other oftentimes.
Okay, example, like you might have a favorite player in a certain sport, but you know who's the best, right? And you know who's the best at that sport, for example. So that's what I'm saying is that it kind of changes in constant motion. But yeah, it's interesting seeing 21 Savage make a couple of lists here. Like, how do you think he's cementing his legacy as a rapper for the new generation?
I think, again, he's one of the most unique and hard-hitting, rappers coming out of the trap scene and coming out of ATL presently. But even just looking at him regionally as a rapper and even the time that he came out in, I wouldn't put him top 5 in any of those types of lists. And, even just talking about like, because his whole argument was like non-lyrical rappers, I just feel like there's better non-lyrical rappers like a Young Thug that should be above Polo G or Lil Durk.
Yeah, even like a Future should be. You've Travis Scott, for example.
Yeah, exactly. There's better non-lyrical rappers.
There is. I do have people above them. But listen, Trevor, thank you for sending this in. I appreciate you. But let's go on to Zeal. This one's very interesting because I'm not sure if this is troll or if this is actually valid.
This is facts.
Okay, so listen. Number 5, we have Hopsin. Number 4, we have NLE Choppa. Number 3, NBA Youngboy. 2, Joyner Lucas. And then number 1, Drake. It's so interesting to see all the types of different tastes, especially for the hip-hop genre and where you could go with your list. But as soon as I saw Hopsin, I had to question. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I've bumped Knock Madness, and I bumped an album like Raw. I've been there.
Knock Madness is decent, sure. You have the Ill Mind of Hopsin series, but I just feel like how, in what world do you have Hopsin on a list and not Eminem, bro? It's like choosing to drink a diluted glass of scotch, bro. Like, you have the better version of the artist who does everything that artist does but better, and you're not going to include him? Like, think about Hopsin as a rapper in terms of the horrorcore style, the aggressive rhyming,
the controversy, like the comedic value, all that sort of stuff going on.
That's Eminem's MO, just done to a lesser and not as great extent.
Okay, listen, I don't think NLE Choppa should be close to a top 5 list.
No.
at least in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of his music, but listen, if you guys enjoyed,
Joyner Lucas has not been the same since ADHD, which is one of the worst concept albums I've ever listened to. Drake at number 1, though. I want to ask you about that. Do you think that's valid?
Do I think it's valid? I think on a technicality standpoint, from like pure rapidy rap, no, I don't think so. I think legacy standpoint and career, yeah,
Really?
absolutely. Are you crazy, bro?
Am I crazy? Drake at number 1 of all time?
For a legacy standpoint, if someone were to make, I let pure legacy and career. All jokes
Absolutely.
aside,
He's one of the most successful rappers ever.
Exactly.
I mean, if we're looking at just who's accomplished the most, sure. But in terms of like the best hip hop artist or rapper, I don't think he has the catalog to back it up, and I don't think he's had the consistency. You want to throw in someone like a Black Thought, for example. He's never had a whack verse. He's never put out a whack album. Drake, on the other hand, has had those weaknesses throughout his career.
Well, I just because you completely missed what I said before this. I said as a rapper and rapidy rap, no, obviously
I'm not saying just rapidy rap. I'm talking about consistency throughout your projects.
But don't underplay like Drake's discography.
I'm not
This guy has
underplaying
classic
it, bro.
albums.
I
This
just
guy has
think
more than
that-
3 classic albums.
I just don't think he merits a top 5 position, in my opinion.
I think if you were to do a legacy list and talk about some of like the best people that have ever like contributed to the genre, and you would put Drake, I think you can make a very, very, very valid argument.
Top 25, maybe. That's what
Yeah,
I'd
I mean,
go
like,
with
listen,
it,
but at
hey.
that point, you're just picking with straws, you
No,
know?
I'm
But let's
not.
keep going on with this. Let's go on to EDG, and this is how his list goes. This is one of the best lists I've seen all day. Yeah, number 5, Mos Def, 4 Nas, 3 Kanye West, 2 MF Doom, and then 1 André 3000. So a lot of artists that are kind of inspired by each other in a certain type of way. And I mean, having Nas at number 4 is a bit questionable, but seeing Kanye and MF Doom and André 3000 in front of him doesn't really hurt my soul, so I'm okay with that. Making Mos Def crack the list actually is super original, but does Mos Def ever make a top 10 list for you? Let's say if you had to make your like ranking.
I think that Mos Def is definitely one of the greatest to ever touch a microphone. When you look at the Ecstatic, when you look at Black on Both Sides, when you look at his work as a duo with Black Star, classic records and albums. But is he above a Biggie? Is he above a Black Thought, a Hove, a Kendrick, who are all missing from this list? I don't believe so, because he does have a short catalog and not every single album hits. For example, looking at something like the New Danger, that rock album. So I don't know if that one's valid, even though I love Mos Def. But André 3000 at number 1's controversial, because there's the whole, he never went solo. Can he really be placed at number 1? But I think that when you look at the most forward, pushing artists sonically and lyrically, and how he sort of brought a whole new MO to Southern hip hop, André 3000's valid at number 1, bro. Even the fact that, like, if you listen to all of his best songs, Elevators, Return of the G, something like even Aquemini, every single flow is approached in a very unique way. He'll never repeat himself. He's the true definition of like an alien rapper, bro.
Yeah, he is.
Who can
absolutely
go anywhere. So
well, what's cool too is that I kind of spoke about this in the best album from every year. If you guys want to check it out, that video's on the YouTube for the 90s. I was just going in the backstory of AT Aliens and then Aquemini, and how like he completely changed the game when it came to production and also content matter, talking about technology and like extraterrestrial beings, and like mixing that in with the political substance and the storytelling, like just such a unique outlook on hip hop. And going back to your claim, well, not the claim, like the statement saying that, hey, listen, does he have a solo catalog to back it up? Bro, I'm sorry, like Outkast's catalog is good enough to be able to do it.
They have 4 classics in their catalog, so what the fuck else more do you want? And he's one of the best feature artists of all time.
And I think as like an MC, you could also include Big Boy, let's say, in a top 20 rappers list. I've seen that before, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, he is super underrated as an MC, and he brought a lot to the table, especially when it comes to the hook writing of Outkast.
Also love seeing MF Doom at number 2. He's someone that was actually coming up on a lot of lists that we saw in the YouTube comments, and I'm like, fuck yeah, bro. Just one of the most inventive, creative rhymers that we've ever seen. And when you look at underground hip hop, he's the GOAT undebatably. So awesome picks there, EDG. Thank you. But next up, we have Sazzy from Twitter. Number 5, J.I.D and Joey Badass, sharing that title. Number 4, J. Cole. Number 3, Nas. Number 2, Ab-Soul. And number 1, Kendrick Lamar. And
2010's head.
yeah, he has a very specific taste. And obviously likes rappers that have a strong pen game, that bring a lot of substance. I don't think it's a great list, though.
I think that if you had to do a 2010s list, this would be almost near flawless to be.
But Ab-Soul at number 2, bro?
Well, Ab-Soul has some serious albums to his name. I mean, like, there's very few rappers that have made a control system, to be quite honest.
That's it. He has the one classic album, in my opinion.
Yeah, he has that. He has the technical ability.
He does.
He has everything you want as a rapper. So I'm not even going to, like, look at you blindly for putting Ab-Soul in the top 10 list. Number 2, maybe it's a bit questionable. I mean, Nas, if this was like, let's say, considered a 2010s list, probably not. I don't think that Nas has enough input in the 2010s decade and, let's say, material even to back that up. I mean, I'm a big fan of Nazir, and we actually spoke about it in a live stream, I think, and we were just going on how underrated that album is, but I don't think
this is an all-time list, though. You know what I mean? So I don't think it matters what decade.
I think, listen, okay, if that's the case, I think J.I.D. has a lot more to prove. I think Joey has had a fantastic career, and he continues to drop quality every single time he drops a studio album, but top 5, not sure. J. Cole, that's tough. I mean, you were getting a lot of heat for saying J. Cole on one of our Instagram reels, actually, for the best rapper.
I said he's the best rapper right now, and I stand by that. And I think more and more as J. Cole excels and matures as a rapper, he's making his push towards that top 15, maybe top 10 by the end of his career. So I like seeing J. Cole on this list. But let's go on to a different list from Arnavai from YouTube, and this one, I'm not sure if it's a fucking troll or not. Number 5, Kendrick Lamar. Okay. Number 4, Smoke Perp. Number 3, Sheck West. Number 2, The Baby. And number 1, Nav. What's interesting, honorable mentions are somewhat serious. Lil Dicky, Nas, Tupac, and G-Eazy.
No, this is definitely a troll. But what I want to do with this list is actually just try to play devil's advocate. Where do you think you could slot them in any sort of top 5s in any lists?
I mean, listen, bro, Nav is sort of representing for a whole community. Like, if you think about it, he's one of the first Indian rappers to actually get it popping, and I feel like he has that whole culture behind him, and that's impressive.
Especially for Canada as well, tying into that, you see the influence in Canada. If you're not from Toronto or Montreal, I mean, even in other cities, he has it popping off, but you really hear that influence. So I do agree with you. Especially for Canadian rappers, I think you could slot him into a list. The Baby, I'm not sure, man.
You can't fucking defend that too much.
I don't think you could defend The Baby that much. How about Sheck West? I don't know if Sheck West makes any sort of list for me. Kind of has maybe 2 songs at most. Smoke Perp, there's no fucking way. Kendrick Lamar, fine. Lil Dicky, there's absolutely no way. And then G-Eazy. It just felt like he kind of went on Google and he was rappers that are seen as corny, and then after that he kind of slotted in a list with some legendary rappers.
But that's what makes it interesting, is that you still have Kendrick in there. So is it a complete troll? He had me thinking with this one. So it was a pretty funny list. But let's go on to Derez from Twitter, and the list goes like this: number 5, City Girls; number 4, Carisha; number 3, Lotto; number 2, JT; and number 1, Young Miami. So 4 of these picks are essentially City Girls. Then you have Lotto in there, and listen, bro, I mean, unless you're spending your weekends in strip clubs or just twerking on TikTok, I don't know how you can possibly have City Girls in a top 5 list, bro. I'm going to be honest. And it's interesting because we did some fan content in Dreamville, and we asked people, what's the one artist you would put as a red flag for people listening to? Almost everybody answered City Girls. And let me ask you this, if a male rapper spent 60% of his tracks talking about his Johnson, would people respect it like that? Because that's kind of what you're getting with City Girls.
Is there any rappers doing that right now?
Not really.
I really can't.
But listen, we're not the target audience for this.
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
Right?
First of all, I found it interesting because I didn't know if Derez was being serious or not. And then you go to his profile on Twitter and he's down with it. So I mean, listen, salute to you, brother. I'm happy you're enjoying these artists, but like I said, man, this is just not my cup of tea. And I don't think City Girls are making music for a 22-year-old Italian man, that's not necessarily the target audience. So I don't know. I have very little to say about this list, but I just found it interesting.
Let's go into one more list. So we have Tisantu from YouTube. Thank you for sending it in. And this is an interesting one. Number 5, Big Pun. Fucking W.
That's a W.
Number 4, Eminem. Number 3, A$AP Rocky. Number 2, Kendrick Lamar. And number 1, Mac Miller. Listen, Big Pun's a cool pick. He sort of fits into that landscape of someone like a Biggie or a Big L who's had a short-lived career but made a fucking impact with just one album.
Capital Punishment's a classic.
Absolutely.
So what's interesting is that I didn't expect to see any Big Pun in any sort of list because he's kind of the New York legend that gets overlooked the most, to be quite honest with you, just because maybe people are not familiar with Capital Punishment
or familiar with Terror Squad either.
Exactly, and the work with Fat Joe and everything else. So, and actually, there's a very interesting documentary if you guys want to go watch on YouTube about Big Pun and his career. Actually inspired me a bit just to see his story. But I mean, yeah, looking at Big Pun on the list, that's fantastic. Eminem's a W. A$AP Rocky, I mean, if I had to make a favorites list of all time, he would maybe crack a certain ranking, but I wouldn't have him in an all-time list.
Same for Mac Miller, right? He would probably make a favorites list, but as the number one, MC of all time, I think it's a bit far-fetched, to be honest.
It is a bit far-fetched, but how about Kendrick Lamar at number 2? So there's been a lot of Kendrick Lamar conversation, and I want to
you know what it is? Our community loves Kendrick. We love Kendrick. It only makes good sense, but I think that when it comes to Kendrick, he's cracked my top 10 list, but not my top 5 list yet. I think that he hasn't had the longevity up to this point that a Nas has had, that a Jay-Z has had. So it's sort of a waiting game with me and Kendrick.
I would probably consider him in my top 10.
Yeah,
I think I'd
top 10, absolutely.
Yeah, I think top 10. You have to consider him at that point. But listen, guys, how do you feel about these top 5 lists in the comment section? Let us know, and let us know where we got it right or where we got it wrong. We love you guys. Thank you so much for the support. And if you guys have not checked out our audio podcast series yet, we're dropping them every Tuesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else you could access audio episodes. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.